Hello, this is Lady Boulay. I hope you're having a wonderful day. Thank you for your support. Thank you for subscribing to the channel. Thank you for your thumbs up, for your comments, and thank you for sharing the videos. Thank you for all you do to support the channel. And yes, we are commanded to love one another, whether we want to or not, or whether we agree with each other or not. So, y'all just sit in silence for a few seconds and just watch. This is the burning of Nottaway Plantation in White Castle, Louisiana. It was built in 1859 and burned down on May 15th, 2025. This was called a slave plantation where 155 people transported from Africa via the transatlantic slave trade to be held in captivity in this place until they died. The journey of Nottaway Plantation ended on May 15th, 2025. This is history going up in flames. Make no mistake about it. It is history going up in flames. But this plantation had an opportunity to redeem itself, and it did not. This is a picture of some of the enslaved people that were held in captivity at Nottaway Plantation. Nottoway was a sugarcane plantation, and sugarcane cultivation is more laborious than cotton cultivation. And cotton is bad enough, but sugarcane is even more so. Most of the people in this picture look young, so they would have had a long life of very harsh and laborious work, not to mention the treatment of the enslaved people on these plantations, which could have been from harsh to deadly. So living on a plantation was some serious business. With its well documented history, Nottoway should have been a center of learning. It should have been a place where Americans, both black and white, especially the descendants of slavery and the descendants of the people who held them in slavery, could have come and had communication and talked about the development of the country, place, and the part that slavery played in the development of this country, and about the harshness of slavery, and also about the benefits of slavery. Unfortunately, or fortunately, there were benefits. A lot of wealth was built off the backs of those people that were enslaved in places like Nottoway. It is the hardest thing to get people to understand that this country was not built on magic. This country was not built on the genius of white people. This country was built on the backs of enslaved people. This country was built on hard work. But the foundation of this economy was agricultural cash crops: cotton, sugarcane, tobacco, rice, and other crops. It is the hardest thing for people to understand that. This country was not built on magic. It did not come up overnight because somebody waved a magic wand. Hard work went into building this country. Suffering went into building this country. A tragedy took place behind the scenes in the building of this country. And because America wants to hide this and tell the world that white people built this on their genius, the real story of America doesn't get told. So this could have been a place where people could have gone and learned, where it could have advanced humanity. It could have advanced the relationships between black and white Americans. Instead, Nottoway became a place of entertainment, of nostalgia, of romanticizing and glamorizing an era that was tragic for a whole race of people. And when I go to these plantation houses, because I want to hear what the narrative is, what they're going to say. And I am always astonished by the number of white people who come to those plantations from all over the world. And of course, you know the Asians are going to be there. But they want the glamour, the glory, the romance of the plantation, but they also want the tragedy. And that is something that I have discovered by going to these plantation houses and listening to the story of the plantation. They are always romanticizing this great planter. I went to my husband and I went to a plantation house in Biloxi, Mississippi, where Jefferson Davis last lived. And they were just talking about the plantation house, and they'll make big deal over the furniture and the draperies and the porcelain china and the silver, and and they'll make a big deal over that. And the enslaved people are in the background when their work is what paid for all of that stuff. So while we were at the house, they were doing all this talking about Mr. Brown. Mr. Brown owned the plantation, but he let Jefferson Davis come there and stay after the war, when Jefferson Davis, who was the president of the Confederacy, had lost his home. So he was down there staying in that house that belonged to a Mr. Brown. So finally somebody asked, well, what did Mr. Brown do? Well, he was a planter. Well, what was a planter but somebody who had gotten his hands on some slaves and worked them to death, taken all of their money, who had stolen the labor of the enslaved people. But Mr. Brown was the star of the narrative, not the enslaved people, who actually earned the money for Mr. Brown to have all of that stuff. So they romanticized the idea of white people living in these grand houses with all of these slaves working around, taking care of them without looking at the real picture. Those white people were not doing that work. They were stealing the labor and the humanity of the enslaved people. They never seemed to get that. And to me, that's the tragedy of it. Nottoway was a vacation resort. They had changed it to a plantation and resort. And they were having weddings and wedding receptions and proms and all of those, just frolicking in a house of horror. And because they refused to recognize the humanity and acknowledge the presence and the sacrifice of the people who were held in captivity in places like Nottoway, this is what you get when Nottoway burns.
When your ancestors destroyed the largest remaining antebellum plantation in America,
And this, here you have Harriet Tubman and Frederick Douglass smiling as Nottoway burns. Somebody posted this AI generated picture of Nottoway burning and enslaved people in the background holding hands watching it burn. And the caption says, some fires ain't lit with matches. They're sparked by memory and retribution. I came across this on my Facebook page. Dr. Mia Crawford Johnson in Louisiana pouring libations and rejoicing, thanking the ancestors as the Nottoway Plantation burns to the ground. Wow. This house should have been a center of learning, a center for reconciliation and healing and understanding between the two races of people that were involved in this tragedy. Too many Americans are not ready for that. They're still in denial. But there are those who are grown up enough to know that it is time for us to put the past, as tragic and horrifying as it was for many, to put it in perspective. This is the Whitney Plantation. It is about 40 miles from Nottoway and about an hour's drive from New Orleans. The Whitney Plantation has decided to take a different approach. The Whitney Plantation is located near Wallace in St. John the Baptist Parish, Louisiana, on the river road along the Mississippi River. It is less than an hour's drive from New Orleans. The plantation was founded before the Civil War and is the first slavery museum in the United States. The museum opened in 2014. The Whitney Plantation Historic District is preserved by the Whitney Institute, a nonprofit whose mission is to educate the public about the history and legacies of slavery in the southern United States. The grounds contain several memorial sites dedicated to the more than 100,000 men, women, and children who were enslaved in Louisiana. Many survivors were interviewed as adults for the Federal Writers Project during the Great Depression in the 1930s. These oral histories of hundreds of the last survivors of slavery in the United States were collected and published by the federal government to preserve their stories. There is a lot of information, documented information out there about slavery if people choose to learn about it, not glamorizing it and not romanticizing or glamorizing it, because it was not romantic and it definitely wasn't glamorous for black people. But the Whitney Museum has done something very extraordinary. It has given those people back their dignity, their humanity, their names, and their faces. They have put a face to it. And that's the beginning. Then maybe if we get past that, we can come to terms with the contributions that Black Americans have made to this empire, and they are vast. The Nottaway Plantation should have been a center of learning and not a place for frolicking and memorializing the tragedy of another race of people. Thank you for listening. Give me a thumbs up and have a good day.